The pen scratched across paper. Vivian watched Bradford slide the divorce documents across the mahogany desk, his Patek Philippe catching afternoon light. He didn't look at her. Just checked his watch again, fingers drumming impatience against polished wood. Sign it, Vivian. Let's not drag this out. His voice carried that edge she'd learned to recognize over the past 2 years. The tone that said she didn't matter anymore. That she never really had. He leaned back in the leather chair, arms crossed, already somewhere else in his mind. Would you stay silent if your husband erased 7 years with a signature? Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and really I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Vivian's hand stayed steady as she reached for the Mont Blanc pen. The same pen she'd given him on their second anniversary when gifts still meant something. Her fingers closed around cold metal. No trembling. No tears. Just perfect control. What Bradford didn't know was that she'd already won. 7 years earlier, their studio apartment had barely fit a bed in Bradford's computer setup. Vivian worked 3 jobs while he wrote code until dawn, living on ramen noodles and her unwavering belief. They'd shared dreams on a second-hand couch with springs poking through worn fabric. When this works, it's our success, Bradford had promised, pulling her close. Always ours, Viv. I couldn't do this without you. The first funding check arrived on a Tuesday. $20,000 that felt like 20 million. They danced in that tiny kitchen, laughing until they couldn't breathe, planning a future that seemed limitless. That was the last time he looked at her like she mattered. 6 months ago, a man in a charcoal suit appeared at Vivian's usual coffee shop. He carried a leather portfolio stamped with gold lettering she couldn't read from across the table. Ms. Ashford? I represent your mother. The room tilted. Vivian set down her cup carefully, concentrating on not spilling. Her mother died in a car accident when she was 8 years old. Everyone knew this. The funeral. The flowers. The small grave she'd visited every year until she turned 18. My mother is dead. No, ma'am. Margot Severin is very much alive. The man opened his portfolio, revealing documents that rewrote everything. Margot hadn't died. She'd disappeared, escaping an abusive husband who'd threatened to destroy her if she took their daughter. So she'd left Vivian with her grandmother and built an empire instead. Severin Holdings spanned 72 countries. Real estate. Technology. Defense. Pharmaceuticals. $1 trillion reach that made Bradford's company look like pocket change. And she'd been watching Vivian's entire adult life, seeing everything Bradford had done. The shift started when Colton Dynamics hit $100 million valuation. Bradford's voice changed first. That new condescension, like he was explaining simple concepts to a child who couldn't possibly understand his world. Charity isn't a real career, Viv. When are you going to do something that actually matters? He stopped inviting her to company events. Started making jokes at dinner parties, small cuts disguised as humor that left her bleeding in front of strangers. His business partner Trevor fed every terrible impulse, whispering poison in Bradford's ear about needing someone who matched his energy, his ambition, his level. You're a titan now, Brad. You deserve better. Then Sienna Morrowes walked through his office door. 26 years old. Brand strategist, Bradford called her, hired at twice the market rate for reasons that became obvious within days. Her hand rested on his arm at the product launch. Perfume that wasn't Vivian's clung to his shirts. Instagram stories suddenly featured a woman laughing in the background of every post. She's just a colleague, Bradford said, not meeting Vivian's eyes. You're being paranoid. But paranoia requires doubt. Vivian had certainty. She watched Sienna's presence shift from background to foreground, watched herself become invisible in her own marriage. Bradford stopped pretending to care whether she noticed. Stopped pretending at all. The gala invitation arrived 2 weeks later, embossed gold on cream paper. The event that would show Vivian exactly where she stood. Vivian wore the blue dress Bradford once said he loved. The Colton Dynamics anniversary gala filled the ballroom with champagne glasses and forced laughter. She stood near the back, holding a drink she hadn't tasted. Bradford took the stage. Spotlights caught the confidence in his stance, the expensive watch on his wrist. He thanked the investors who'd believed in his vision. Thanked Trevor for strategic guidance. Thanked the engineers, the advisors, even Marcus, the building security guard who let him in early on Sundays. He never mentioned Vivian. Not once. 30 feet away, his hand rested on Sienna's lower back. They laughed at something private, heads close together. Vivian felt herself disappear, erased in a room full of witnesses who'd watched her support him for 7 years. Later, she cried in the shower until the water ran cold, kneeling on tile while steam filled the bathroom. That night, in a Geneva boardroom, Margot made a phone call. The acquisition had begun. 3 of Bradford's major investors suddenly needed to liquidate their positions. Emergency meetings. Apologetic phone calls. Market conditions, they claimed. Personal portfolio adjustments. Bradford barely noticed, too busy planning the future with Sienna. A Luxembourg company called Arcan Ventures started acquiring the shares. They paid premium prices, sent polite representatives. Heinrich, the Swiss attorney handling negotiations, assured Bradford they were passive investors who believed in Colton Dynamics' trajectory. 6 weeks. That's all it took. Arcan Ventures owned 67% of Bradford's company. He owned 22%. Control had shifted to strangers in European offices, and Bradford Colton had no idea he just lost everything that mattered. While he planned his freedom celebration, Vivian planned his reckoning. Bradford tapped his pen against the desk. My lawyer said you tried to go after the company? The prenup is airtight, Vivian. You get nothing from Colton Dynamics. Nothing from assets acquired during marriage. He smiled. Sharp. Cruel. You walk away with what you came in with. Which, let's be honest, wasn't much. Vivian picked up the Montblanc pen. Heavy in her hand. She remembered wrapping it 2 anniversaries ago, when he'd kissed her and called her his foundation. She signed her name in steady strokes. Each letter felt like closing a door. Did you ever love me? She asked quietly. Really? Bradford's expression flickered. Something almost human crossed his face before vanishing. I loved who I thought you were. Before I realized you had no ambition. No drive. He shrugged. I outgrew you. It happens. Vivian walked out. The door closed with a soft click Bradford didn't hear over his already ringing phone. He texted Trevor about the celebration party, relief flooding through him. He had 72 hours left as king of his empire. He just didn't know the Queen had already taken the board. Outside, Vivian pulled out her phone. Her hand stayed steady as she dialed a number she'd only called twice before. Mother. He signed. Margot's voice came through clear from Geneva. Then let's begin. The mandatory board meeting notice went out the next morning. Bradford read it over coffee, frowning at his laptop. Arcan Ventures requesting attendance from all major stakeholders. He forwarded it to Trevor with a question mark. Probably just want to congratulate you. Trevor texted back. Standard investor stuff. Vivian spent 3 days transforming. New hair. Different clothes. The name Severin instead of Ashford Colton on every document her lawyers prepared. When she arrived at Colton Dynamics 30 minutes before the board meeting, walking through glass doors she'd passed through 1,000 times, Bradford didn't recognize her at first. Bradford entered the boardroom expecting routine investor questions. He saw Vivian and stopped. Confusion pulled his features tight. What are you doing here? Margot Severin walked in behind him. Tall. Elegant. Absolute authority in every step. I represent Arcan Ventures. Color drained from Bradford's face as she opened the portfolio. 67% ownership. Controlling interest. His company, built on Vivian's sacrifice, now belonged to her mother. You outgrew me, Vivian said, voice cold as January. Now I own you. The vote took 3 minutes. Bradford Colton removed as CEO, effective immediately. Sienna's brand strategist contract terminated. Trevor scrambling, realizing his position hung by a thread Margot could cut with a word. Vivian stood, gathering her papers. 7 years I believed in you. 7 years I worked 3 jobs so you could chase this dream. She walked toward the door. Enjoy explaining this to Sienna. Bradford sat frozen in the chair where his empire fell apart, finally understanding what he'd thrown away. What happens when the person you underestimated holds all the power? If this story inspired you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got more stories coming that prove karma doesn't forget. Drop your thoughts in the comments and inspire others who need to hear this. Your story might be the hope someone else needs today.